Hola, and welcome to today's lesson about conjugating IR verbs in the preterite tense in Español with Señorita Harders. IR verbs are verbs that end in IR in the infinitive form. Some of the most common verbs in Spanish are regular IR verbs like abrir, to open, asistir, to attend, cumplir, to accomplish or to carry out, describir, to describe, escribir, to write, ocurrir, to occur, permitir, to permit, recibir, to receive, subir, to go up or to climb, and vivir, to live. Today, we will learn how to properly conjugate each of these IR verbs in Spanish in the preterite tense. But first, let's do a quick review. If you remember from our video about preterite AR and ER verbs, we learned that the preterite means past. And an easy way to remember this is that both preterite and past start with the letter P. We also learned that we use the preterite tense when talking about a cap. Do you remember what a cap is? No, not talking about a baseball cap. I'm talking about a completed action in the past. And we also learned that we use the preterite tense whenever we see any of our preterite keywords in the sentence. Do you remember some of the preterite keywords? Great job! These are some of the keywords that will let you know that you have to use the preterite tense. Ayer, meaning yesterday. Anoche, last night. Anteayer or antier, meaning the day before yesterday. El otro día, the other day. Esta mañana, this morning. La semana pasada, last week. El mes pasado, last month. El año pasado, last year. Hace, and then a certain number of días, semanas, meses. For example, hace 2 días means 2 days ago. Hace 2 semanas means 2 weeks ago. Hace 2 meses means 2 months ago. And hace 2 años means 2 years ago. And last but not least, una vez, meaning one time. Before we move on to conjugate IR verbs, let's first review how to conjugate AR and ER verbs in the preterite tense. These are the AR verb endings in the preterite tense. You may want to write these down so that you can remember them. Yo ends with E con acento. Tú goes with haste. Usted, él, and ella ends in O con acento or O with an accent on it. Nosotros ends in amos, just like it does in the present tense. Vosotros ends in hastes. And ustedes, ellos, and ellas end in aron. Now let's review the conjugations for the preterite ER verbs. The ER verbs end with yo ends in I con acento, or the letter I with an accent. Tú ends in iste. Usted, él, and ella ends in yo, with an accent on the O. Nosotros ends in imos. Vosotros ends in istes. And ustedes, ellos, and ellas end in yeron. Okay, now let's take a look at the preterite IR verbs. Hey, what do you notice about the preterite IR verb endings? Muy bien. IR verbs have the same conjugation as the ER verbs in the preterite tense. Yo ends in I con acento, I with an accent on it. Tú ends in iste. Usted, él, and ella ends in yo with an accent on the O. Nosotros ends in imos, just like it does in the present tense. Vosotros ends in istes. And ustedes, ellos, and ellas end in yeron. And just like the AR and ER verb endings, we must remember to include the accent in the yo and usted, él, and ella forms. In this case, we have an accent on the I in the yo form and on the O in the usted, él, and ella form. Don't forget the accents because they can change the meaning of the word. All right, let's go ahead and practice conjugating the verb abrir in the preterite tense. ¿Cómo se dice I opened? Abrí. Excelente. Did you remember to put an accent on the I? ¿Cómo se dice you opened? Abriste. Great job. ¿Cómo se dice you formal, he or she opened? Abrió. Did you remember to include an accent on the O? ¿Cómo se dice we opened? Abrimos. Muy bien. ¿Cómo se dice you all opened in Spain? Abristes. And how do you say you all or they opened? Abrieron. Buen trabajo. Okay, so now we've learned how to conjugate the verb abrir in the preterite tense. Practiquemos. Today, we're going to be practicing how to determine how to conjugate an IR verb, but we're going to make things a little bit trickier. Today, not only will you be conjugating IR verbs, but you're also going to be figuring out whether or not to conjugate it in the present or the past. So the first question that we're going to ask is it presente o pretérito? Is the sentence in the presente, the present tense, or the pretérito, the preterite or the past tense? How will we determine if a sentence is in the present tense or the past? Great job! We're going to need to use our keywords. So anytime that we see any of our preterite keywords, that will be an indicator that we are going to use the preterite tense. For these practices, if you don't see a preterite keyword, then you're going to conjugate the verb in the present tense. However, in real life, another way to determine if you would use the present or the preterite is by looking at the context of the situation or what the person is talking about. The next question that we're going to ask is, ¿Quién es el sujeto? So before we can conjugate the verb, we need to know who is the subject of the sentence. And last but not least, our third step will be to conjugate the verb. So we will ask ourselves, ¿Cómo puedo conjugar el verbo? And in this case, with IR verbs, you can see the subject and then the present tense endings, o, es, e, imos, en, and the pretérito endings, y, iste, yo, imos, ieron. Let's take a look at an example together. La semana pasada yo blank la puerta para dejar entrar a mis mejores amigas. The first question that we're going to answer is this sentence presente o pretérito? Pretérito. Muy bien. How did you know that this sentence was going to be in the preterite tense? Great job. La semana pasada, last week, is one of our key preterite words. So that should have let you know that this sentence is going to be conjugated in the preterite or past tense. Our next question that we're going to ask is, ¿Quién es el sujeto? So who is the subject of this sentence? Yo. Muy bien. So now we know that yo is the subject and we're going to conjugate the verb in the preterite tense. How do we conjugate abrir in the preterite tense in the yo form? Abrí. Did you remember to put an accent on the I? Buen trabajo. Let's take a look at another example together. Karen y Carlos blank el concierto de Ariana Grande hoy. The verb that we're using in this sentence is asistir. And if you remember, asistir, even though it looks like assist, it really means to attend. Our first question is this sentence presente o pretérito? We're going to conjugate this one in the present tense. How did you know? Very good. Hoy means today. So they attend the concert today. I suppose you could also have said they attended the concert today if it was something that they attended earlier on in the day. But in this case, because we see hoy and not one of the keywords that we talked about before, we're going to practice conjugating this one in the present tense. Our second question, ¿Quién es el sujeto? Who is the subject in this sentence? Karen y Carlos. Excelente. So because we're talking about Karen and Carlos, we replace that with the subject pronoun they. They attend the concert today. And last but not least, now that we know we're conjugating with the they form or the ellos form, now we can answer the last question, ¿Cómo puedo conjugar el verbo? How can I conjugate the verb? Asisten. Karen y Carlos asisten el concierto de Ariana Grande hoy. Great job. Let's try one more. Sofía blank 15 años ayer. The verb that we're using in this sentence is the verb cumplir. Cumplir means to accomplish, but in this case, it also means to have a birthday. So literally, the sentence would be saying Sophia accomplished 15 years. And our first question, is this sentence going to be conjugated in the present or the past? El presente o el pretérito? Muy bien. We're going to conjugate the verb in the preterite tense. How did you know? Ayer. The word ayer is one of our preterite keywords that means yesterday. So we're going to be conjugating this sentence in the preterite tense. Now we can answer our second question. ¿Quién es el sujeto? Who is the subject? Sophia. Sophia is the subject of this sentence. So we're going to conjugate this in the ella form. She. She accomplished 15 years yesterday. Now we can answer the third question. ¿Cómo puedo conjugar el verbo? How can we say she accomplished 15 years or she turned 15 years old yesterday? Cumplió. Did you remember to put the accent on the O? How did you do conjugating regular IR verbs in Spanish? Be sure to leave a comment below. I hope that this video about conjugating regular IR verbs in the preterite tense was helpful for you. Please make sure that you like and subscribe so that you can learn more Spanish with Senorita Harder.